Our students can start out so excited about the learning journey, and then sometimes it fades. So, what exactly is it that causes students to disengage, to disconnect? Well, in this snapshot, that's what we're talking about. What is going to be the specific strategy to help our students stay engaged so that they can have this deep comprehension of knowledge that we need for them to have? So, we're going to continue our series, Study This, Not That. Our goal is to keep you focused on concepts that are going to help you become a better nurse educator and to achieve your certification exam. So, welcome back, everybody. If you haven't joined us before, we're delighted that you're here. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to this channel so every single time a new snapshot is released, you'll be notified right away. That usually happens every Monday. We're going to start out by reading in our devotional. We're going to focus on day 15 because it's very appropriate for our conversation today. That is the joy of learning. Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever. That is a quote from Mahatma Gandhi. The devotional I want you all to consider for this snapshot for this week. Education is a lifelong journey, not a destination. As nurse educators, we must stay curious and open to new knowledge, just as we encourage our students to do. When we embrace lifelong learning, we continue to evolve and improve our action and practice. All right, so I want you to think about engaging and committing to some of those elements that I've talked about. Being able to think about how we can be committed to becoming a better nurse educator. And we know there is no better way than to be on this journey to achieve CNE success. All right, so go ahead and pull out for me, if you haven't already, your study worksheet. I want you all to make sure you stay connected to the content we're going to discuss today, taking a deeper look at what those specific eligibility criteria are related to CNE, CNE Clinical, CNE Novice, and CNE PV. Okay, we're going to cover that because we get that question a lot. So we're going to talk about what are the differences, what are the similarities, and hopefully by the end of our time together, you'll have a deep understanding of which exam really aligns best with your journey. Next, what we want to do is go ahead on that study worksheet, write down today's date, whatever date you're watching this snapshot, and then we want you to write down an objective. We're going to focus on the specific, not only eligibility criteria, also key concepts, okay, that you want to focus on, and those concepts that you don't need to focus on, okay? So we're going to talk about both. You're also going to find the link to the Study This, Not That document that will help guide you as we go through week to week these key concepts to help you stay focused. All right, so first we want you to go ahead and go with us to the NLN.org website. So we're doing something different in this snapshot. So you're going to go to the NLN.org website with us. We're going to start sharing our screen so that we can go there together. The NLN.org website is going to be your primary source of information to clarify any questions you have about meeting the eligibility requirement. So you're going to go to NLN.org. We'll go back so we can go there together. So NLN.org. And then once you get there, you're going to see, and I'm going to go ahead and go on full screen. All right, so once you get here, you're going to see the credentialing option on the drop down. Once you get to the credentialing homepage, you're going to go to NLN Certification Division on the left, and then you're going to choose whichever CNE exam you're on the journey to complete. You will see automatically on the left-hand side those resources. Okay, so that's how we got here. So this is going to be the eligibility. So you have with CNE option A and option B. Option A, you must meet criteria 1 and 2, licensure that's unencumbered, and it must be valid in the country of residence. Number 2, that is an additional requirement, is you have to have a master's or doctoral degree in nursing with a major emphasis in nursing education, or a master's or doctoral degree in nursing plus a postmaster's certificate in nursing education, or a master's or doctoral degree in nursing and 9 or more credit hours of graduate level education courses. There are some examples of courses that are listed here. We always recommend that you reach out to NLN if you have any questions as to whether or not the courses, the graduate level courses, actually count towards this requirement. Okay, and then option B, you must meet criteria 1, 2, and 3. So unencumbered valid license. Number 2, master's or doctoral degree in nursing with a major emphasis in a role other than nursing education, and experience of 2 years or more employment in a nursing program in an academic institution within the past 5 years. This is an important part. You can see that it's bold right here. All eligibility criteria for initial certification must be met at the time of completion. You can see also here there's a disclaimer. And the next focus we want to have is looking at the resources. All right, so let's go back to the previous page. The next step we want you to take, and this is what we want you to do for each of the exams, so all 3, okay? We want you to take some time, or all 4, I should say. If you meet or are considering any of the exams, we highly encourage you to take some time to look at that eligibility criteria for each one. And then we want you to look at the actual competencies, okay, that are associated with the specific exam that you are considering completing. The other consideration we want you to think about as it relates to which exam you take is going to be your everyday work. The goal is that when you show up for the exam, as you're moving forward in the journey, reviewing content to help you clarify your muddy points, it should feel natural. It should feel like a natural progression that you're going to take as the final step to validate your competency. So let me give you an example. If you go through the blueprint, which we're getting ready to take a look at for CNE Clinical, we're going to switch it up. If you feel like the majority of those competencies, which are really behaviors that we should demonstrate in our everyday work, if you feel like, you know what, I'm really not engaged in the practices that are described in the blueprint, that's an indicator that it probably doesn't align with the best exam for you to take. Okay, so again, when you look at the CNE exams, the goal is that it's part of our everyday work, the majority of these competency statements. And if you feel like it's not part of your everyday work and it's going to be an incredibly heavy lift for you to be able to meet that competency, then often that's an indicator that you're not quite ready for that exam. But again, what we want you to do is engage in doing this self-assessment, use this blueprint that we're going to take a look at. So next, what we're going to do is go back to the CNE Clinical, because I feel like we always look at the CNE. All right, so for the CNE Clinical, what you're going to find again is this candidate handbook. Every CNE exam has its own handbook, okay? And what we want you to do is print it out, because every single page is important, because we want you to read through it. Now, if you're on the journey and let's just say you've already taken your CNE, that's great. What we want you to do is share this snapshot with other colleagues that may be considering taking the CNE, CNE Clinical, CNE Novice, or CNE PV exam. You will see here in every handbook, it describes kind of what those goals are. Again, the objectives to align with your everyday work. First, with CNE Clinical, it distinguishes academic clinical nursing education as a specialty. It recognizes the academic clinical nurse educators' specialized knowledge, and it strengthens the use of selected core competencies to contribute to the professional development of the academic clinical nurse educator. The next point I want to make is related to these competency statements. You can see listed here that it really spells out what those behaviors look like, how these clinical educators show up to support the learning experience, and what those behaviors are. Okay, so this is a description of what those behaviors are and perhaps what your work may look like as a clinical nurse educator. So here again is an indicator, a trigger, clarification regarding criteria that should be demonstrated and behaviors that should be demonstrated by that clinical nurse educator. What else is it that you want to focus on? Well, I mentioned earlier that blueprint. The blueprint is not only to describe those subcompetency statements that you can expect to see questions about on the exam, it's also a North Star for us. So our North Star should dictate what our evidence-based practices are to align with evidence-based practices and our ability to fully support our nursing students to achieve success, because that's our ultimate goal. Is we want to create these teaching strategies, these learning experiences that will help ensure that our students are actually learning. You will see here on the screen is going to be the exam blueprint. This is the overall exam blueprint. And then what follows that in every handbook is this detailed test blueprint. So this is how you're going to determine exactly where your knowledge gaps are as it relates to the exam. You're going to go through and do a self-assessment by asking yourself one question. How likely am I to recognize the correct answer on the exam when I see a question related to this concept? So let me give you an example. This is competency 1 for, again, CNE clinical, function within the education and healthcare environment. If you feel like, as an example, you are not responsible or unsure about what it even means to integrate theory and practice, that is a gap area for you, okay? And then next, when it talks about fostering professional growth of learners, if you have no idea what that is, or you're really not involved or responsible for that specific role, then that's, again, another indicator that not only is it a gap area for you, it's probably not aligning easily with your everyday work. So again, you want to consider, is this CNE clinical going to be the best fit for me? And then if you still have no idea, even after you go through the blueprint, NLN again is going to be your primary source to really talk through whether or not a specific exam is best aligned with your everyday work. All right, so that's what we want you to consider as you're thinking through what your next steps are going to be. Next, what we want to talk about is our thought-provoking question. Okay, so if you're a colleague that's on the journey for CNE Clinical, Novice PV, or CNE, having clarity around which exam is going to be the best fit for you is a key step, a key first step as you move forward on your journey. Next, what we want to do is really talk through our thought-provoking question, and then we're going to wrap up our time together by reinforcing key concepts you want to focus on and those that you don't want to focus on. Okay, so first, as you're looking at your gap areas and going through the candidate handbook and looking at those subcompetency statements, you're going to get a clear picture as to what your knowledge gaps are. Remember that you're using as your primary textbook Billings and Halstead for all 4 exams to ensure that you have that deep comprehension of knowledge that we know is so essential when it comes to moving forward on your journey. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at our thought-provoking question and let's see what you think. And remember that the goal is that you're having a deeper understanding about the concept. We're excited when you choose the correct answer, but the most important part is that you have additional clarity around the rationale. All right, so here we go. A nurse educator is redesigning a medical surgical course to strengthen clinical judgment using case-based learning. Students demonstrate strong content recall but struggle to transfer knowledge across patient situations. The educator aims to use repetition intentionally to promote deeper learning, learner development, and clinical reasoning over time. Which strategy best aligns with effective facilitation of learning and learner development while using repetition in case-based learning? So we have 3 choices when you get to the CNE exam, 150 questions, 3 options for every question, okay? And this is across all 4 exams. A, provide repeated faculty-led reviews of heart failure concepts before each case study, reinforcing key content and guiding students through expected clinical decisions in a structured format. B, assign multiple case studies on heart failure with similar formats and expectations, allowing students to independently apply previously learned concepts while maintaining consistent evaluation criteria. Or C, design scaffolded, unfolding, case-based experiences that revisit heart failure across varied contexts, prompting reflection, peer discussion, and progressive clinical decision-making. All right, if you chose C, you are correct. Okay, so give yourself a round of applause. The most important part, though, is to make sure that you understand the rationale. Okay, so let's talk about why C is correct. And this is going to be a great closeout as we explore what it is that you should study and not study. Option C is correct because it intentionally uses repetition with variation and progression, which supports both learning, competency 1, and learner development, competency 2. By integrating scaffolded, unfolding cases, students revisit concepts in different contexts. engage in reflection and peer interaction, and develop increased independence in clinical judgment. This approach is going to primarily focus on 4 different areas of development with our students. Number 1, it's going to engage them as a learner, putting them in the center of the learning journey as opposed to a passive review, right? So it's engaging them in that active learning that we know David Cope talks about, as well as Malcolm Knowles really provides the framework for, saying we should be self-directed in our learning as adults. Number 2, it supports socialization. We know how important socialization is in our role as a nurse. We have to work collaboratively as a team, ultimately to provide the best patient care. Number 3, it encourages this progressive responsibility and confidence in decision making. We don't want students just checking a box. We want them to think through the rationale, the justification, even analyze the patient care decisions that they are making. And then 4th is aligning with how clinical judgment develops over time. When we are able to give our students some feedback related to the decisions that they're making, it helps them be a stronger clinician and ultimately helps us provide safer patient care. All right, so again, what you want to do is be able to walk away with some clear clarification related to the concepts that we discussed in this thought-provoking question. Our goal is not to focus on the correct or incorrect answer. It really is to have that deeper understanding of concepts that will help you choose the correct answer on the CNE exam. All right, and then last, we're going to take a look at what you want to study and avoid as it relates to getting ready for the CNE exam. All right, so we're focusing again on the document that's listed right here in the description for you. The link is listed right here in the description. In the previous snapshot, we talked about the exam blueprint, and now what we're talking about is our Bloom's Taxonomy. All right, so what is it that you want to focus on as it relates to Bloom's Taxonomy? Great question. I'm glad you asked. Well, first, we want to be able to think through exactly what those key elements are related to the 3 learning domains. Okay, so if you take a look in Billings and Halstead, pages 188 through 190, you're going to see a description of all 3 learning domains. Okay, first and foremost is understanding the definition. What exactly is the definition of that learning domain? And then second of all, you want to think through what are those verbs? What's the learning that's happening at each level? You want to ensure that that verb is aligned with the objectives. That's going to be the course learning objectives, as well as the assignments that we're giving to our students. You're going to see on page 188, if we just take as an example, cognitive learning domain, that lowest level is remembering. So what do we see? List is an example. We want our students to be able to list the normal vital sign ranges. We want them to list what is actually happening when we take a systolic blood pressure, right? To list out maybe how blood is flowing through the heart. So we want to keep it very basic. And we want to make sure that what we're not doing is that we're not studying specific language related to, as an example, a type of machine, right? Or a type of device. We don't want to focus on that when it comes to our students' ability to really have that deeper understanding of what's happening when we're taking our vital signs and why it's so important. When we're helping students and really guiding them on this journey to achieve success, to provide the safest patient care possible, students are easily overwhelmed. Our ability to decrease their cognitive overload starts with making sure that we're focusing on key concepts that are aligned with the learning objectives for that specific course. Well, it's no different when you're on the journey to achieve that passing score on the CNE exams. We don't want you wasting time on practice questions. That's right, practice questions is not correlated with the ability for you to pass the exam. Now, if you do have a lot of test anxiety, or it's just been a long time since you've taken a standardized exam, and it causes you to be distracted, have a lot of mental doubt associated with your ability to pass the exam, absolutely, we encourage you to take the NLN self-assessment exam. However, that's the only practice exam that we encourage you to take, and there's a good reason why. This was a recommendation directly from the NLN commissioners when we spoke with them many years ago, and as we've attended sessions with them during the NLN conference. Your ability to pass the CNE exam starts with exactly where we started in the snapshot, taking a look at the candidate handbook, being clear about exactly what's being measured related to your knowledge, related to application and analysis, because we know 70 to 80% of those questions are aligned with those mid to upper levels of learning that are associated with the cognitive learning domain. The only way you won't achieve success on the CNE exam is if you quit. However, it starts with having a realistic look at where your knowledge gaps are and what are your normal everyday practices. We hope that you enjoyed this snapshot and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Remember that our CNE in 60 Days program is available for those colleagues that are ready to move forward and get the CNE finally off of your bucket list. It took me almost 8 years. The good news is it doesn't have to take you that long. The 60 Days program includes everything you need, all the textbooks, the 7-week study plan, as well as our study workbook delivered to your front door. So there's no guessing. And we guide you every single week for 6 weeks, as well as through the masterclass, to make sure that you have bridged all of your theory practice gaps and that you have that deep comprehension at the application analysis level to achieve that passing score. We look forward to seeing you, and we hope you have a great one. Take care, everybody.